Hi, and thanks for joining us. On today's show, we got Peter Voss, who we're going to discuss all things AGI with. It's obviously the topic du jour, artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence. Here's my conversation with Peter Voss. Hi, Peter. Thanks for joining us here today. I guess not from sunny Los Angeles. You're now in Austin. Is that right?
Yes, I moved here a year ago.
What inspired the move? I mean, you're not the only person, obviously. What inspired the move for
Well,
you?
like a lot of other people, I got tired of California government. It's so dysfunctional in so many different ways. So, yeah, yeah.
Enough said, right? That's another podcast, a different subject matter, obviously. For us, we want to talk about AGI. I mean, all the rage now, or all the discussion around artificial intelligence. Obviously, it's a field for which you have a great depth of experience. How did you get it originally involved? How did you originally get into it?
Yeah, so I'll go back quite a while. So I started off as an electronics engineer, started my own electronics company, then fell in love with software, and my company turned into a software company. So I developed a ERP package for small to medium-sized businesses. That company was quite successful, went from the garage to 400 people, did an IPO. So that was awesome. It's when I exited that company, it sort of really struck me what big project do I want to tackle? And the obvious thing was, how can we make software smarter? Software really is pretty dumb. If the programmer didn't think of something, it'll just crash or give an error message or whatever. So how can we build software that can actually have common sense and that can, adapt to changing circumstances and not be brittle? And that led me on a 5-year research path where I really wanted to deeply understand all different aspects of intelligence, starting with epistemology, theory of knowledge. How do we know anything? What's reality? And philosophy, what's free will and consciousness and so on. And then also, what do IQ tests measure? Are they meaningful? How do children learn? How does our intelligence differ from animal intelligence? All of those different topics. I spent 5 years kind of trying to bring it all together. And how can we build computers that can think, learn, and reason the way humans do? And so 2001, I had enough together to actually start an AI company. And we started building various prototypes and frameworks. And in 2002, I actually coined the term AGI together with 2 other people. And we wrote a book on the topic that sort of a revival of the original dream of AI from 69 years ago when the term AI was coined. The original dream was to build thinking machines. And, that turned out to be, of course, really, really hard. So the field of AI turned into the field of narrow AI, solving one particular problem at a time, which is very, very different from building a thinking machine. It's really the programmer's intelligence that figures out how to play chess or how to do container optimization. So AGI is really to revive the original ambition of AI. And yeah, that's sort of how I got
Yeah,
into
that
it. And
gets it
I've
going,
been
right? I mean, there's so many directions. I'd love to take the
mm,
conversation based on what you just said.
mhm.
Um, it's it's interesting that AGI. I mean, one of the things that we discussed or know is that having been attributed for AGI itself, and that's just that natural progression, I guess, from what our original thinking of AI was to be to what it has become now, right? That's kind of where we're going with this now, because it's very topical, obviously, to be talking of AGI. You were doing some of this thinking earlier. How have things changed for you since, or how are people approaching you now, given that progression?
Well, it's interesting because it's actually a little frustrating because the term AGI is again being abused. And I can give you a very good example. Sam Altman just a few weeks ago said, we are going to have AGI in a year or so, and it's not going to really be such a big deal. It's not going to make a big change in the world. Now, that's nonsense.
And that's
If
not your
he's talking,
definition either, is it? Yeah, from what
yeah,
he's
if he's
saying too.
talking about AGI, it will make a huge difference, and I believe a very positive one. So, the term is being hijacked for marketing purposes or money raising or whatever, and so I'm now starting to talk about real AGI. you
Yes,
know,
as people say, yeah,
you
the real whatever, right? The real
yeah, to
person
get
we're teaching,
to
speaking of as
get to
well.
full human level, the ability to learn like a human, to understand like a human. And generative AI is really not on that path. As amazing as it is, it's not going to get us to AGI.
And that's what he's speaking of, right? That's what they're trying to accomplish right now. Like, I mean, I don't think we're not very far away from his vision of what we're talking of when it's generative, as you say.
Yeah, so generative AI, there are a number of reasons why it's not on the path to AGI, but we've gone from the famous paper that launched the sort of GPT, the transformer thing, was called "Is Attention Is All We Need," which was sort of the technical breakthrough to make these large language models work. But now we can sort of jokingly say $7 trillion is all you need. I mean, he's now talking about building custom, dedicated chip factories and nuclear power to power this. And that's absurd. Our brain uses 20 watts of power or something to do what we do. And here we have these gigawatts of power for these large language models because they're just such a brute force approach to trying to get something intelligent. And it's just the wrong approach. We need something that doesn't need 100 million or trillion or billion dollars to train a model. We need something that can learn more like a child, that can learn interactively, stepwise, incrementally. And that will require a tiny fraction of the amount of computing power that these large language models. But that approach is what DARPA calls the third wave of AI, or cognitive AI. And that's actually the path that we've been pursuing.
Yeah, that's what you're speaking to, right? So obviously the topic du jour is these huge models and crunching all the data with all kinds of compute. That's a lot of the way that we go to solve technological problems, though, isn't it? And we've done that with others in the past as well, and gradually things get smaller. So let me actually just ask you, in the inverse of what you just said, is it not sort of typical for us to start big, and then Moore's law and continue to reduce to the point where we're actually able to function with this much smaller compute, much smaller?
Well, I think that's actually a good question. That yes, we certainly miniaturize things and make them smaller and more efficient. So there is that element to it. But what they're talking about is bigger and bigger models. Right now, ChatGPT was trained on, I believe, 10 trillion pieces of information, and they're talking about 100 trillion and bigger models. So the models themselves are getting bigger, and whatever efficiency gains you get by miniaturization and that are kind of offset by that. It's fundamentally the wrong approach. The approach starts with, we have a lot of data, we have a lot of compute. That's a hammer we've got, so everything looks like a nail, And as long as they're making progress with that, it kind of makes sense. But it's becoming pretty painful now. I mean, already the current models, when companies try to actually do useful things with them, they find they're actually very expensive, apart from, the other shortcomings that they have, like making up stuff, the lack of
The
reliability.
right?
And
Yeah,
so
is it
on.
even accurate? What's produced, is it even accurate, right?
Right. So you really want something that can learn more like a child. A child, you can show a child, if they've never seen a giraffe before, you can show them one picture of a giraffe, and they'll be able to recognize giraffes, from this side, that side, a purple giraffe, and no problem, And with statistical models, you probably need to feed them, a few thousand images of a giraffe. So it's fundamentally a brute force and kind of a dumb approach. I mean, extremely effective, but it's not the way our intelligence works at all. And I believe that is a much smarter way of going about solving AGI.
Fascinating to think as it does evolve. I mean, all the dollars are being thrown. I guess it's because of the returns that they foresee, right? Based on approaching it in that manner, right?
Yeah. Well, already I think we're seeing a lot of these big bets not working out, like the one big company where basically the founders and pretty much everybody migrated to Microsoft. I wonder what's happening behind the scenes there in terms of that was the company, I think, that raised $600 million or something as seed round. Who's ever heard of a seed round of
$600 million.
600 million or 400 million or something ridiculous? And I wonder if they still have some of that cash left in the bank and they say, well, let's rather distribute this to the stakeholders
I think they've gone further.
before it's all gone.
They've even bailed the investors out. They've restructured things, is what's occurred.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you say, that the story hasn't been completely written on that yet, because they've repackaged things with a view to at least at this point not declaring what has been invested all at a loss, because they consider it be something that's got this huge potential, right? And I guess that's what it is, as we discuss this or debate the right way to do it.
If companies can actually make money,
if they can, right? That's the holy grail, is it not? Is it not to actually to achieve whichever way you're building it? And I certainly appreciate your arguments. I think
well, it depends how much of a it depends how much of a moat companies have. I mean, is it going to be NVIDIA and the cloud providers that make all the money, and the model builders themselves, that becomes a commodity? Already there are a lot of open source models coming up and a lot of competition. It's a lot of people are going to lose money, but I guess that's what VCs bet on. That they're also invested in the companies that happen to then benefit.
That's right. I mean, and they're prepared to invest in many of them, and will continue to pour into the winners, right? And on that basis, they're able to realize. That's interesting you say, like, is it NVIDIA or for the open source, and even as you look to blockchain, right? And those that are trying to develop in an open source manner that's traceable through the blockchain. Did they stand a chance? Do these companies stand a chance? Or sorry, do these projects stand a chance against the behemoths, against the NVIDIAs of the world?
A blockchain? No. A blockchain is like a waste of time. I mean, the amount of transactions that you need to do and the cost of a transaction on a blockchain, no.
Let me ask you another way, Peter. So as opposed to a blockchain project that is not doing all on chain. So I think that from what you're describing there, that's a non-starter. People are suggesting it's all to be on chain.
Right.
But to empower, so through a blockchain project, so because a number of these companies that are emerging, or companies, these initiatives, these DAOs emerging, whereby there's funding through crypto, right? And they're putting on chain that which is required, but coming up with as well the processes, so that they're being owned not by the large corporations, but by the project themselves. Do you think there's a future in that?
I haven't seen any of those organizations kind of make sense. I mean, there's always somebody pulling the strings, and hopefully not pulling the rug, but more often than not pulling the rug. I mean, to me, and I did spend quite a lot of time in the blockchain world as well a few years ago, and just almost everything there's pump and dump. I mean, apart from the sort of, call them legitimate uses of cryptocurrencies to be able to move money around the world, where you may have government restrictions or whatever. I mean, and of course, a lot of people have made a lot of money just on momentum investing, but that's speculation.
That's right. That's something different. I mean, there is money to be made that way. Interesting though that you say you spent the time there, and I mean, for a few years ago, even those types of uses were considered to be pump and dumps. So it's interesting how things have evolved to the point where we now consider some of these to be, I don't know if legitimate is the right word, but certainly here to stay, right? You say moving funds around, or a store of value, as you talk about something like Bitcoin. So what was once, I think, considered to be, well, certainly nefarious, is now something that seems to be settled. And so I guess my question would be, can you envision, and I guess I'm asking you to stretch, but I hear you saying have not yet seen anything that's viable, but can you envision a situation where there is something like that, similar, produced in the future, that has the same type of traction, the same type of stickiness that actually makes sense? Like what I guess it's a very, very broad question, but what
I mean, Bitcoin, is really well established now, so I see that continuing, and until governments outlaw it, once it competes too much with their own interests, perhaps. I don't know where that's gonna lead. But in terms of managing a company, you always have the trust problem that these things don't solve. And by having contracts embedded, I mean, again, it's something I've experienced. Writing these contracts is also like black magic, and it's so easy to get the contract wrong or to have a loophole or something in there. And again, for somebody to run away with it. Ultimately, it's not a solid mechanism for being able to trust the system. Trust really needs to be created by a company that you trust the people, the company. The reputation has to be rest with the company. I don't think you can substitute that by having a blockchain and believing that takes care of the trust factor. I mean, we've seen it so many times where these blockchain things have just, somebody pulled the rug, ran away with the money, or whatever. There's no security in that.
No, it's interesting you say that. I mean, put the trust in the corporations. I think it's the current vernacular is the opposite of that, right? And a lot of people listening will be listening and thinking, can we trust? Can we trust first government? Can we trust these corporations? I think that many of them are trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. Ultimately, they're also seeking to profit from them, but it's not necessary that that doesn't have to go in hand with trying to do the right thing. AI is one of the topics that people are scared of these days, right? When they talk of AI, taking over or an existential threat to humanity, what's your response to that?
Yeah, I think it's very unfortunate that the AI risk community has got so much money over the last 10 years or so. It's probably $1 billion by now, many hundreds of millions of dollars, probably more than $1 billion. And it's largely driven by people who have a totally theoretical approach to this. And that theoretical approach, I think, is based on some false assumptions. And the problem is you don't have anybody on the other side, basically, who has any kind of funding, significant funding. You can get funding if you can persuade the world that AI is going to kill us all, but if you give me money, we'll come up with a solution, or we'll try and come up with a solution, And that's sort of been the dynamic. But if you say, no, I think your assumptions are wrong, AI isn't going to kill us, it's very hard to get money for that kind of
it's just not sensational either, right? So you're not going to get the attention.
Right. And then, we are all primed with, the Hollywood view of AI, that it's always a bad guy and going to kill us and take over the world. And I think they're just mistaken. I don't think there is an existential threat from AI. Certainly, AI will change the dynamic and is changing the dynamic of the world. But then we also need to look at the positives. I think there's a good argument to be made that perhaps we need AGI to save us from ourselves.
Talk more. That's interesting because we can't be trusted ourselves, can we?
Well, we need more intelligence. I'm not saying that the AI should be like a parent or to control us. Be some.
No, but it can be a check, though, right? I think what you're saying is it can be a check for.
I think yes, I think it can make us more rational. Rationality in humans is an evolutionary afterthought. We're really not that good at logical thinking, at rational thinking. So if each of us had a little AGI personal assistant, that we could bounce ideas off, we would probably make a lot fewer mistakes and maybe elect better leaders, make better decisions, about ourselves, about the environment and everything. So that's kind of the, but of course, AGI has so many major positive benefits to help human flourishing. Imagine just even training up one AGI, or trains itself to a large extent up to a PhD level cancer researcher. You now make 1 million copies of that. You have 1 million PhD level cancer researchers chipping away at the problem. We're going to make much quicker progress. You take that now to nanotechnology, battery, energy, pollution, governance, anything where additional intelligence can help us come up with better solutions. That's the promise of AGI.
And it's fascinating to think where it is going to take us, right? Can we take a minute just to, and I don't know if, I don't even know how to choose timelines or, time horizons, but what do things look like, because I'm assuming, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the exponential rate of changes as the AI and AGIs improve are going to continue to accelerate. So, Peter, if you will, what do things look like in 2 years now, based on what's currently being developed? How does day-to-day life for the average person change that's making use of some of the technologies that are going to be available?
Yeah. My own estimate is, as far as generative AI is concerned, statistical AI, I think we probably are close to the top of the hype cycle. Already companies that have been using this or trying to use and implement this technology for a year are realizing that you cannot rely on it. It can't, for example, it can't be customer facing. You always need to have a human in the loop, or you need to put enormous amount of security build security around it. And it becomes extremely expensive, and you still don't have a very reliable system. I don't see bigger language models and more technology really solving that problem. They'll become more and more expensive, more and more complex.
More sophisticated hallucinations, perhaps,
Yes,
as you described it. Now, are you saying that's not solvable, though? Because it
yes,
must be.
No, I don't believe that with statistical AI. It's very inherent in the technology. So there will be, use cases that we're already starting to use very effectively, such as summarization, idea generation, image generation, and many things of that nature. FAQ, if it's customer facing, the customer can still see whether did it pick the right FAQ or not. But that's not. We already had that technology even before ChatGPT. Yeah, sorry, what was the question you were asking?
Well, I think we're driving to an answer on it. Is because you're making references to some of the ways that we're going to use it. It sounds like you're thinking that it's going to be like an assist to what we're doing.
Yes.
Right? So as we continue to use it, it's going to be something that we leverage, right? Idea generation, for example.
Right.
We'll be better.
There'll be a human in the loop at all. And I mean, we've seen it in programming as well. I think if you're doing pretty mundane coding and you're not a very good programmer, then these tools can improve your productivity tremendously. But if you're doing complex stuff, it's almost completely useless for that. And what I find when I program and I start to use it in something that I don't, I may not know an algorithm, and I try and look it up, it'll give me the right answer X% of the time, and it'll give me the wrong answer sometime, but very confidently. I can't tell the difference. So I'll implement the wrong answer, and it won't work, and then I'll end up spending more time, debugging it. So I'm not finding it that super useful,
that's
in
fascinating.
terms of the productivity aid.
From what you're describing, so it sounds like you categorize yourself as a sort of a superior programmer, then, right? I've heard many people describing how it's the assist we just mentioned, where an average programmer or maybe a junior programmer is able to leverage the technology to certainly increase their outputs and improve. But it's the super programmers that are saying, people are catching up to us, but they can't still fill that upper echelon.
And I think the same is true for an author. If you're a really top class author, you write in a certain style. And I mean, you'll have noticed that a lot of the articles coming out now are obviously GPT style. And it's a bit painful actually to read them. They sort of have this flowery language and so on. So, if you're a good writer, you don't even want to use it to generate ideas, because you want to start with your own outline. You want to have the outline, Now, possibly once you have that, you can throw it into ChatGPT and say, give me some more ideas, and then harvest that. But if you're not a good writer, then of course it can help you write something,
I've
that
had a few
is,
people on. We're going to see a lot more crap, is the reality, right?
yeah,
Because people are inherently lazy.
yeah,
Yeah, it's only the upper echelon that we sort of mentioned before that is going to continue to rise. The vast bulk of it, we're going to just be continue to be inundated with
right,
mediocrity,
right, yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, actually, I remember now you actually asked me sort of why I think ChatGPT won't continue improving and get us
Yes.
to AGI, that these problems for hallucination can be solved. And I think you can already kind of see the answer in the name GPT. G is generative. It's trained on 10 trillion bits of random information, not random, but good, bad, and ugly data, and it doesn't know what's good and what's bad. I mean, there'll be maybe some clues in there, but it really doesn't. So it generates an answer. It's kind of forced to generate an answer when you prompt it with whatever. So there isn't a second level reasoning process, what Daniel Kahneman called system two thinking, that is sort of the metacognition of monitoring what you're saying. What are you talking about? Why are you saying this? Or what are the alternatives? They simply don't have that architecture, and they can't update their model in real time. So you have G, generative, that it makes up stuff sort of inherently. You have P, that it's pre-trained. And they basically a read-only model once you deploy them. So as they get in new information, or they cannot absorb new insights and update their model in real time. So that's not how intelligence works. I mean, you could, for example, also see it on, I have a Tesla, and I love the Tesla, but the self-driving, it's not adaptive, and it can't be, So if a particular route, for example, as a human, there might be a new route that you take, and you have to kind of pay, all right, where do I have to pay attention? Where, as I get around the corner, there's a driveway. You already know that, Now, once you've driven past there a few times, you're more confident in how you can drive or how you should navigate a particular area, or other clues that you see, you see, or you hear a siren or whatever it might be. And these systems are not adaptive. They cannot update their model in real time. And you have the same problem whether it's customer service or whatever. You have to retrain the model for anything. So that's the P, the pre-trained, which is an inherent limitation. And the T is just the technology, the transformer technology that's used. And that really is both the breakthrough in making these systems so powerful that, the transformer is attention is all you need. Well, that was the paper that was published with to announce transformer technology, but that commits you to this backpropagation bulk training, that it becomes a read-only system. So anything based on transformers cannot learn in real time, and so these are not going to be overcome. They're not going to be little fixes to the system. It really needs a fundamentally different approach. And pretty much all the luminaries in the field of generative AI say we need something else to get to AGI. It's only when you listen to Sam Altman trying to raise money, or as a marketing thing, say, oh yeah, we'll have AGI next year, or Elon Musk saying we'll have full driving next year. Yeah, I've been driving his car for 6 years, and if anything, the full self-driving has gotten worse as it got more scared. I guess as you get lawsuits and things, you have to kind of make the thing more and more nervous.
Interesting. So I understand the limits of the model as you described. Theoretically, though, as you say, and I think what you say, the luminaries are saying it's not within such a model, but theoretically it is possible, right? Another such model being developed.
Yes, but it
Another
needs to be
different model developed.
it needs a different architecture. And
Right.
DARPA published something a few years ago they called 3 waves of AI. And the first wave is good old-fashioned AI, what we had in the 80s and 90s, basically logic-based systems, expert systems, and so on. The second wave is the one we're surfing right now. is the big data statistical system. But the third wave is a cognitive approach. It's basically where your starting point is not how much data do we have, how much compute do we have, and what can we do with that. Your starting point is, what does intelligence really require? It requires conceptual understanding, learning in real time, and being able to ask questions and having metacognition, basically knowing what you know. And so that's a cognitive AI approach, but there's very little money going into that because, the momentum is in statistical AI.
And it's, you can appreciate the money saying it's easier to build and fund something in that for that type of model, as opposed to, as you say, cognitive, because what are the goalposts? What are you measuring? How can you?
Well, I mean, we have, we have a roadmap with our cognitive AI, and certainly we could measure that, and it's not going to because the training costs, maybe hundreds of dollars, not hundreds of millions for our system to train. So it's not that we're going to need many billions of dollars to make progress on that. So progress can be measured, but investing is is pretty much a momentum game, and certainly going from ChatGPT 2 to 3 to 4 been significant improvements. So if you believe that's going to continue, well, that's kind of an easy bet in a way.
So that's the growth, right, or the growth strategy,
Yeah.
and investing in, as you say, momentum in trading.
Yeah.
You're, I think, suggesting that you maybe want to be betting on another horse, though, right, or another way.
Well,
How
absolutely.
would you place those bets right now, though? How would you? I mean, especially when you say that it's not a great deal to actually build it.
Yeah.
First of all, why isn't that happening then? And then how do you
Well,
actually
I
place those
mean,
bets?
I'm glad you're asking. Well, obviously, we believe this is the horse to bet on. There are just very, very few teams in the world that are actually working on the third wave, on cognitive AI, because the oxygen has been sucked out of the air with, Gen AI. In fact, we have a whole generation of computer scientists now who don't know anything other than statistical AI. When you talk about cognition, or metacognition or concept formation or any of these sort of psychological terms, they blank out. And unfortunately, VCs get advised by, these people. So it's hard to even kind of anybody being interested in that, because, there just isn't the momentum in it. So it's just we're trying to educate the public, and we are seeing more and more negative feedback coming out where large corporations are spending a lot of money to try and get a Gen AI to do useful things, and they're finding, well, actually, it's not that easy to make them work, make them work reliably or effectively. That they're very expensive. And you're building up this huge technical debt with implementing these things that you need to keep tweaking and fixing and protecting yourself and building extra guardrails around. As the technology changes, the guardrails need to change. So they're really finding it's very difficult technology to actually implement in a practical, useful, and cost-effective way. So we're hoping that people will listen more and more to things like we have our technology, for example, is implemented at one of our customers is 1-800-Flowers, Harry and David group of companies, about 12 companies, and they use it for customer support. And, a few weeks ago, we had Valentine's Day. We replaced 3,000 agents with our technology, without any hallucinations, without needing a separate nuclear power plant to, to run this. And, that is the kind of the promise of cognitive AI, where you don't have a black box. You can rely on the results that you can get. It's just that technology does need to be scaled up to get to human level.
Yeah, for sure. I guess there's one, you just described one application. Can we go through and speak to that in a practical manner? So how has that system been built? Like, so, to serving, well, Valentine's Day, right? As an example. So Valentine's Day was serviced. talk us through what the AI was doing, how it was, I imagine, supplementing, right, what the rest of the team was providing to their customers.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally we literally replaced 3,000 agents that in previous years they had to hire, for that
So that
3-day
one time
peak,
of year, right.
which of course is a big pain. But we provide the service the year round. I mean, we're now planning for Mother's Day, and then it's over Christmas, the peaks, and the rest of the year, it's just not, the number is not as high. So it's basically, the system is deeply integrated into their backend system, so it has all the business rules and has information about that. But the big difference, we call our system a chatbot with a brain, because it has short-term memory, it has long-term memory, it has reasoning ability, it uses context and so on. So if somebody calls in and says, I want to buy chocolates for my niece for her birthday, and then, as you go through the procedure, you'll get to know the name. So the system will learn the niece with that name, birthday, there's the date, likes chocolate, so that information will be there and can be used even if it's not in your back end system. So the system can use information of what you said earlier in a conversation or in prior conversations. And, we handle replacements, returns, changes to orders, order taking, and all of that. And that is, you simply could not do that with generative AI, because if it runs at 95% accuracy and you go through 6 or 7 steps, you're down to 60% accuracy. So 1 in 3 interactions, you give somebody the wrong price or wrong return or whatever it might be, sell somebody a new Chevrolet truck for $1, like happened.
And that actually has happened. Yeah, you can say this hallucinations in that situation can be quite expensive. So I understand the customer service side of things, and I'm taking the next thought and hearing so often of people trying to build these personal assistants, for individuals. I imagine that similar technology would allow the same thing to occur that way as well, right?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Right. So the beauty of our chatbot with the brain is really completely agnostic of which application or industry it's used. It's basically has conversational ability built in, reasoning ability, memory, and all of those things. And then you train it with the additional specific information, like for 1-800-Flowers, it's obviously all of their products and sort of the ontologies. So if we deployed this for, say, a student assistant, it would be hooked up into all of their student systems and the university, whatever their rules are, and so on. And then it would be a personal assistant. The big difference between cognitive AI approach and statistical, again, is the GP. It's not pre-trained. It can learn on the fly in real time. It doesn't need to be retrained. You simply can't do that well with generative AI. Now, people try to overcome that limitation of the pre-training by external systems. On the one hand, you have the input buffer, and you now have some of these new systems like Claude that have enormously big input buffers, like 10,000 or 10,000 tokens. But the problem is that information doesn't actually update the model. It's just short-term memory, and it doesn't really get integrated. The system doesn't integrate it into its core model. So that's again a limitation that really cannot be overcome. On the other hand, they use external databases as well to have long-term memory, but that again isn't integrated, and the system has the same kind of accuracy problems in accessing these external databases. So for personal assistants, you ultimately do need to go to a cognitive AI to get really the kind of personal assistant that you want, that can learn and have deep understanding about the situation as it unfolds.
Is there? I hear that and I agree with you. I'm just wondering, is there a hybrid? I don't know if that's even been defined any kind of, but is there a hybrid that can take advantage of that history and then also be cognitive?
Yeah. So a lot of people ask you that, and it's kind of an obvious thing to look at. Can we not use the power of that? And so the only way I see that happening is that a cognitive AI really has to be the main AI that you're using, and it can certainly use generative AI as a tool. So if I want to write a poem to my girlfriend in the style of, I don't know, some rapper or whatever, or Shakespeare or whatever, take your pick. Certainly, I wouldn't expect my AI to do that, to be able to do that. It wasn't trained on 10 trillion bits of information. So you could use it as a tool the same way that we are using it as a tool. But to integrate them totally and use the power of the large language model constantly just isn't feasible because it's read-only. You cannot update the model. It doesn't change as your information changes. So it's really as a tool. You could use it.
When you say that though, well, why is that not possible? Like, why couldn't you take the output, input it into your system, and then have it almost be circular to the point where it's cycled through a number of times before there's
the transformer model basically really forces you to retrain your whole system, and at the moment for ChatGPT, that's $100 million, and that is going up.
Right. So yeah, there's limits to the way. As you said from the outset, the model the way it currently exists.
Correct. The model really, there's fine tuning you can do on the model, but that only really changes the last layer of the model. And if you try to partially retrain a model like that, it suffers from catastrophic forgetting, which is a problem that's been, long known in the sort of neural net community. So and theoretically, I don't really see a way of overcoming that. And, I follow the literature quite a bit on people working on that. How can you incrementally train it? And one of the reasons that it seems impossible is because it is a black box. So the information is so widely distributed amongst its layers, amongst it billions of parameters, that to know which parameters need to be updated if you have a new fact, it just does not seem at all feasible to do that. Whereas with cognitive AI, we don't have those limitations.
You don't run into that issue. That's right.
We just need to scale up the technology that we have, and we're a small company. We only 30 people in the company, and we have about a third of about 12 people actually in the company now working on moving the technology forward. We're not going to get to human level with 12 people all that quickly. So we're actually actively looking, for funding to expand our team to between 50 and 100 people, and then we believe we can crack this within a few short years.
So a few short years, and then what type of funding do you require? Do you figure?
Depending on what milestones you have, our first milestone is we're only looking at about 25 million, and then pretty much to get to a point where it becomes extremely obvious that we've cracked it, that we'll be that close that it just needs additional training, we're looking at maybe 100 million. So it's
nothing like what's being spent, as you say, on the other models. But it's got a keen traction, and like the way this conversation has been informed, some of these other early ideas, right, have taken a while to evolve to the point where people sort of
the issue is somebody is going to invest in the technology that will get us to AGI, and maybe that's the person I'm talking to next.
That's right. That's right. And maybe from this conversation, right? So one leads to the other, and first step is to put it there. And then
I'm right. I'm doing quite a bit of writing. I'm doing a lot of podcasts and things to get word out there. And it's really, AGI is incredibly valuable. It's going to be bigger than electricity, and it's going to be a net positive for humanity. So that's sort of the first message. Now, not everybody will agree. Some people say, no, I don't want that kind of world, or I think it's going to end in tears, or I don't believe it's.
Is it not inevitable though? I think.
Well, I believe it. I believe it is, but people may say that I don't want any part of that,
People said they didn't want electricity as well, right? It's going to keep us up all night, and we're, it's the same type of arguments were being made. So I think, for the purpose of this conversation, we can conclude.
Yeah. So the first thing is, if you believe that, if you agree that AGI is something desirable and possible, and then the second thing is to really come to the conclusion that LLMs are not going to get us there. Which, as I say, when you talk to the scientists, they say, LLMs by themselves are not going to get us there. And that's pretty consistent, for some of the reasons I've mentioned. We need something else. But very few people say what that something else is. And we have an answer to that. We say, we know what the something else is. It's starting with understanding intelligence, what intelligence requires, and building a system that has the capabilities that are needed for intelligence. So, that is kind of the conversation I'm having with people, and I'm very much of the mind to help get AGI to happen. I'd obviously like it for our company to do it, but we're also very open to sharing what we've learned and what we can do. So it's really more important for me to have a community that says, we want AGI, let's put our heads together and say how we can actually get there. If it's not LLMs alone, what is it? And, I believe I have answers.
It's wonderful stuff. I appreciate you sharing here, and obviously look forward to the community growing as it is, because as I say, I think that we're on that path. This is a question of when, right? I think it's inevitable that we will see that. Peter, what's the best way for people to reach you if they're interested in learning more, perhaps of your company or other things that you're working on?
Sure. Yeah, my company is, igo.ai. And Peter at igo.ai, or LinkedIn, Twitter. It's very easy to find me.
Yeah, you're very easy to spot once you know where to go. So thank you for this. Thanks for being on the show here today. I like to end each episode with something that people can take with them through the rest of the day, through the rest of the week after the show is dropped. Obviously, we're discussing some things today that I think are going to impact the future, the way that we're all doing things. I like the way you describe even, going back to electricity. Can you imagine as, people were first beginning to look at the adoption of electricity? What are some things people could be doing in their lives now, from your perspective, to prepare for, to put themselves at the forefront of the changes that are coming, to put themselves ahead of the curve?
Well, clearly, large language models are, the tools to know. So, being at the forefront. Obviously, I would like people to share the word about the third wave of AI, cognitive AI. But yes, just and also to listen maybe to more people who have a positive view of it and see the benefits of it, and that really AGI is highly desirable, I believe.
I think it absolutely is. I think we will see it. Peter, thanks so much for joining us here today, and I look forward to the next chance we get a chance to chat about the development of AGI.
Great. Well, thank you. Good questions.